Haunted House Revealed, a spine-chilling testimony of unexplained terror and sinister secrets. The Richardson family thought they were making their dreams come true. Nestled in the idyllic suburbs of Forest Glen, Maryland, their new home stood radiant with freshly painted trim and a lawn so well manicured it looked like a postcard. But beneath the charming surface lay a darkness that clung to the corners of the house like mold. As soon as they stepped inside, the air thickened, heavy with memories of lost hearts and restless souls. This was no fresh start. It felt like stepping into a trap. Mark, tired but hopeful after long hours at the factory, couldn't shake the feeling that something watched him from the shadows. Sarah, with her determined spirit, tried to keep things light, paying no mind to her husband's unspoken fears. Their 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was bubbling with excitement until her imagination twisted the comfort of home into something terrifying. Where once vibrant colors had met eyes of wonder, now they morphed into haunting figures lurking just out of sight. "They're everywhere," she cried one night, drawing menacing faces with unsettling, wide eyes. Each stroke of her crayon curled Sarah's stomach tighter. Then came the friendly neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, a picture of warmth with her charming smile and homemade pies. But behind that thick layer of sweetness, her attention felt invasive. She smothered the Richards under false security, sweetening their discomfort with genial conversation. "You'll fit right in," she chirped, but Sarah couldn't shake the way her eyes glinted in the evening light, something unnerving hiding just below the surface. At a local gathering in the park, laughter wrapped around families, but Sarah was on high alert. Where was Lily? The laughter of others became oppressive, a mask for the encroaching dread cautiously weaving through her thoughts. Panic spiked as she searched, heart pounding in her ears. When a trembling child mentioned seeing Lily near Mrs. Holloway's yard, Sarah felt ice seep into her veins. Every neighbor's chuckle and cheer turned into sinister echoes. What kind of place had they moved into, where a kindly facade could hide something far more dreadful? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Terror surged as she sprinted home, breathless and frantic. The white picket fence, once a symbol of safety, now felt like a prison wall where evil could lurk and pounce. Each step inside the house felt charged, shadows seemed to dart, whispers clawing at her mind. She stepped into the living room, and the air turned frigid. With each creak of the floor, each sigh of the walls, something stirred, inching closer, feeding off her fear. Around every corner, despair gripped Sarah's heart as she ventured deeper into this living nightmare. And there it was, a hidden door, its presence palpable, barely hinted at in the purchase papers. The house trembled with waiting silence, the laughter she'd heard earlier echoing back. Would she dare uncover what lay behind it, or was hiding from the truth the safer option? The darkness loomed larger, demanding an answer, and as she reached for the doorknob, she could almost hear the shadows whisper, welcoming her inside. The doorknob was ice cold, sending a jolt up Sarah's arm. She hesitated, thoughts racing. Images of Lily's frightened face seeped into her mind like a creeping fog, pulling at her resolve. Do it, or they might never be safe again. She twisted the knob, heart pounding, breath hitching, as the door groaned open. Beyond it lay a staircase spiraling down into shadows. Cold air rushed up, carrying a musty scent that clawed at her throat. She peered into the darkness and felt the familiar sense of belonging slip through her fingers like grains of sand. "Lily," she whispered, a futile attempt to reach her daughter's spirit. The creaking steps protested underfoot, each sound amplifying the damp silence wrapping around her. Flicking on her phone's flashlight, the beam pierced the dark, revealing damp walls streaked with something dark and red. Her stomach twisted. Paint or something more sinister? Uncertainty gripped her tighter than fear. "Lily!" She called again, voice trembling as it echoed off stone. No response, only the whisper of a draft brushing against her cheek, as if someone or something lingered just out of sight, listening, waiting. Suddenly, a giggle bounced off the walls. It was unmistakably Lily's. Mom instinct kicked in, compelling her deeper down the staircase. Each step plummeted her into an abyss of dread, and the childish laughter twisted into something dark, hollow. The kind of laughter that sent chills down her spine. The flashlight flickered as she reached the bottom. A cold sweat creased her brow. There was more than just dampness here, the air felt thick and alive, heavy with unspeakable secrets. The laughter stopped, and silence crashed over her like a waved eye. In front of her was a dark hallway lined with doors, each identical, worn, and foreboding. Which way to go? Panic clawed at her, but more than fear, desperation surged inside. Lily! She breathed harder. The shadows danced, shifting like they had a life of their own. Rounding the first door, she hesitated, a hand hovering just above the knob. When she turned it, it swung open with a groan, revealing a small storage room. Old toys lay strewn about, some covered in dust, others untouched for ages. A chill snaked up her spine. One of the toys' afraid teddy bears sat on a stool, facing the wall. Creepy, she murmured under her breath, but something about the bear drew her in. Perhaps it held a clue, or maybe Lily had been here. As she approached, the air thickened again, a tide of dread crashing over her. It felt wrong, it felt like a trap, like eyes were watching. From behind her, she heard it, a soft, drawn-out whisper. Mommy. It had the tone of a child, but it was distorted. The hair rose on her arms as she spun around. Lily? Sarah called, but dread slushed through her. The flashlight flickered wildly, then extinguished, plunging her into darkness. Heart racing, breathing quickening, she pulled the beam back to life. But the shadows grasped at it, swallowing the light. The whisper grew louder, turning to laughter, no longer her daughteress, but a cacophony of voices, each taunting, each chilling. Just then, a figure passed in front of her, a glimpse of something pale, gaunt, and not quite human. Join us, it hissed, darkness swirling around it, screaming. Sarah stumbled back, slamming into a door, and to her horror, it creaked open, revealing another dark room. Without thought, she plunged inside, desperate to escape the darkness. But was she running away from something or towards it? The door slammed shut behind her, trapping her in a silent abyss, the laughter now mingling with cries that echoed without form, closing in. The darkness pressed heavy, a whispered promise of unending torment. What had she unleashed? And was her family, the one she fought to protect, already lost to the chilling night? As fear settled, she felt a pull deeper into the room, something beckoning her from the shadows. What, or who, awaited her there? The darkness loomed around Sarah, thick and suffocating. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but the air turned bitter, laced with despair. Beckoned by an invisible force, she ventured further into the room, adrenaline surging, gnarled roots twisted out from the walls, snaking towards her like clawing fingers. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, darting away whenever she tried to shine her light on them. The air grew colder, chilling her bones. She remembered a story from her childhood, one about a witch living beneath a cursed house, trapping the souls of children. Was this where Lily was? Lily! She cried again, voice trembling, desperation eating away at her resolve. Please, answer me. A soft giggle filtered through the heavy air, drawing her to the far corner of the room. The flashlight's beam illuminated the shapes of dolls suspended from the ceiling, hanging by their necks, their glassy eyes wide and staring, forever locked in fear. Sarah's heart sank. Their expressions twisted in a sinister approval, as if encouraging her further into this macabre theater. She stepped closer, her pulse quickening. This isn't real, she muttered, hoping to convince herself more than anyone else. But deep down, a gnawing fear rattled in her core. Suddenly, from the shadows, something shifted. A noise, a scuttling sound, behind her. She turned, light trembling in her hand. Was it the shadows, or was something forming from the darkness? A figure emerged, smaller but twisted by anguish, its face obscured. Mommy, came the distorted whisper again, longing and sadness layered over dread. Stop! Who are you? Sarah shot back, anger replacing fear. With unnerving speed, it lunged forward, but she dodged, backpedaling, panic bubbling to the surface. In the chaos, her foot caught on something, and she fell hard, the flashlight skidding away across the floor. Darkness enveloped her, and she scrambled for the light, fingers brushing against something small and cold. She retrieved the flashlight, flicking it back on, heart racing. The light illuminated her surroundings again, revealing the small figure standing just out of reach. Sarah froze. It wasn't Lily but a ghastly reflection of a child, with sunken cheeks and hollow eyes that seemed too large for its face. "Help me," it pleaded, voice dripping with despair. "Get away from me!" Sarah shouted, stumbling back, desperation clawing at her throat. The walls began to close in, the laughter rising again, drowning out her thoughts. She could see more shadows forming, regret and punishment pulsing within them, sliding across the floor like ink. The weight of their sorrow bore down on her, stirring a sickening feeling in her stomach. "Mommy, join us," echoed the voices, blending, merging, rising to an unsettling crescendo. The air crackled, brimming with malign influence, and she felt hands, fleeting and cold, clutching at her ankles. Panic surged, and she fought to break free but slipped, hitting the ground again. The laughter intensified, morphing into a wailing moan, drowning out everything else. The ceiling dripped with what looked like tears, heavy droplets falling to the floor. Sarah scrambled to her feet, reality warping with every heartbeat. She spotted an exit, a sliver of light peeking through a crack in another door across the room. Summoning her courage, she dove towards it, pushing the door open, praying it led to safety. But her heart sank when the shadows spilled in after her, swirling like a torrent around her legs. Whatever haunted these depths wouldn't let her go easily. Outside the door stood another hallway, lined with mirrors reflecting fractured images of her fear, her despair, and the child that wasn't Lily. As she stumbled through, she felt the icy whisper more palpable, a breath against her neck or perhaps a promise of something worse. And behind her, the whispers turned to a chant, a fiery warning. "Stay with us, don't leave." Join us. What awaited her at the end of this hallway? Was it freedom or another descent into the darkness? With trembling hands, Sarah pressed on. Her mother's instinct roaring within her. She had to find Lily. She had to escape this nightmare, but as she stepped forward, something tugged at her shadow, pulling her back as if to say this is just beginning. The corridor stretched endlessly, mirrors lining the walls like a warped gallery of horrors. Each reflection twisted her image into grotesque forms, faces morphing into anguished masks that taunted her. She felt nausea wash over her. "Lily!" she shouted, desperation twisting her voice. But where was the sweet, innocent giggle? Where were the light-hearted moments they once shared? The echo of her own voice bounced back at her, a mocking reminder of her isolation. Shadows flitted across the glass, always too swift to catch. They beckoned with gnarled fingers adorned in dark mist, whispering soft threats that curled around her like tendrils of smoke. "You can't run," they hissed, an unsettling symphony. "You cannot escape. Join us." Breath hitching, Sarah pressed onward. Each step felt like wading through thick tar, the weight of despair hanging heavily in the air. The lights flickered ominously, amplifying the grip of fear tightening around her heart. What if she really couldn't escape? She pushed that thought aside and focused on the glimmer of light ahead. It pulled her like a magnet, propelling her forward despite the shadows grasping at her. The sound grew louder now, an incessant whisper chanting her name in a voice she almost recognized but twisted beyond comprehension. Sarah. Suddenly, she stumbled, gasping as she caught a glimpse of a different reflection in the mirrors, an image of a girl standing silently, dressed in a white nightgown, hair spilling over her pale face, obscuring all but the wide-eyed terror within. Was that Lily? "Lily!" Sarah cried, voice breaking. Hope surged momentarily, fighting against the despair that had seeped into her veins, but the girl merely shook her head, a silent plea filled with sorrow. The image flickered, melted into darkness, leaving Sarah breathless and trembling. A cold sweat dripped down her back. Something was off. The shadows seemed to shift restlessly, almost circling her like predators awaiting their prey. In her peripheral vision, the dolls began to multiply, their mouths stretching into twisted grins. They dangled from above, swaying rhythmically, eyes gleaming with malicious delight. Their laughter rippled through the air, melding with the whispers, drowning Sarah in a cacophony of terror. "Stay with us, you'll never leave." Sarah halted, her mind racing. What were they? Trapped souls? Lost children? She felt sick. "No! I want to be like you!" she screamed, rage and fear blurring together. But the shadows surged forward, more tangible now, with icy fingers scraping against her skin, pulling her back. Panic gripped at her throat, and she gasped for breath. She dashed to the end of the corridor, tearing through the shadows like paper. She wouldn't let them claim her. Suddenly, she saw at a door, old and wooden, trembling with an urgency she couldn't fully understand. It called to her in a way that felt both terrifying and strangely comforting. Without a second thought, she flung it open and stumbled into a dimly lit room, her heart racing. A sudden silence engulfed her. Not the oppressive whispers but an empty, stifling quiet that felt wrong. In the middle of the room stood an ornate mirror, circled by candles flickering like dying stars. It pulsed with an energy that sent shivers down her spine. As she approached, the surface of the mirror rippled as if alive, reflecting not just her image but scenes, moments from her life, memories, and flashes of Lilia's face, crying, pleading, reaching out to her. Panic tightened its grip. "No!" she yelled, stepping back. But the whispers resumed, more fervent now. "This is where you belong. Embrace the truth. Find her." And before she could react, the mirror shifted, the surface morphing into something dark and enticing, pulling her in, wrapping around her feet like chains. The shadows gathered at her back, forces colliding, urging her to step forward, as if everything she had fought for was just out of reach. "What is it?" she whispered against the growing tidal wave of fear. Just then, a loud crash reverberated behind her. She spun, breath hitching once more, feeling as though someone or something had just broken through. Sarah. The voice was clearer now, unmistakable. It sent a jolt of hope through her veins. Lily. But was it true? Was it really her daughter? As she hesitated, the mirror glowed brighter, and the shadows surged, hungry for her choice. The crashing sounds grew louder, and instinct screamed at her to move. But where could she go? Torn between despair and hope, Sarah's heart raced. What was lurking just behind her? What awaited her in the depths of that haunted room? She took a step forward, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. But the truth lingered in the air, dark and heavy, like a storm waiting to break. And then she felt it, a cold breath, creeping up her spine. The cold breath clawed at her neck, freezing her limbs in place. The shadows quivered, alive with anticipation of her choice, and yet the voice calling her name reverberated with undeniable clarity. It felt like a lifeline in the abyss, and yet could it be a trap? "Lily!" she cried again, stepping back from the mirror. Her voice echoed in the forgotten space, swallowed by the oppressive silence that smothered her. It was then that the candles flickered violently, casting twisting shadows against the walls. She glanced over her shoulder. The door had slammed shut, plunging her deeper into the suffocating darkness. Panic threatened to overtake her, but the voice persisted, older and more desperate now. "Sarah! Mommy, please!" The sound tore at her heart like a knife. The crystal clear plea shattered her hesitation. She turned back to the mirror, heart racing, the world narrowing to that single connection. "Lily," she breathed. Eye on the glass, Lily's eyes widened, glistening with unshed tears. The swirling depths reflected a mix of fear and determination, a haunting mirror of Sarah's own thoughts. "Help me, Mommy!" The walls groaned in response, and for the first time, they began to shift around her, closing in like a vice. The mirror pulsed, and a shard of light broke through the darkness. It beckoned, illuminating the room with a sickly glow, the air charged with urgency. The whispering shadows called again, louder, angrier. "Join us!" they screeched, their sound like nails on a chalkboard, clawing at her mind. "No! I won't give in!" Sarah shouted, the words pouring out of her like a fiercely burning fire. She took a step closer to the mirror, her body quaking with adrenaline. The face of her daughter twisted before her, each moment of joy interspersed with anguish. The light grew brighter, illuminating the way. "Mommy, please!" The voice cracked, filled with a heartbreaking mix of promise and dread. Suddenly, the mirror's surface rippled wildly, morphing into a tableau of memories that were both familiar and foreign. Laughter, walks in the park, bedtime stories, all morphing into scenes soaked with shadows and despair. "Save her!" The voice was a dirge now, filled with hopelessness. Sarah's fingertips brushed against the surface of the mirror. A jolt coursed through her, hot and burning. It felt like she was on the verge of something beyond comprehension. The veil between realities drew thin, and the throbbing shadows seemed to retreat just slightly, as if they were waiting, weighing their options, but the satisfaction was fleeting. "Join us!" The shadows fell back like a wave, crashing into her with reckless ferocity. An icy hand gripped her leg, pulling her down toward the swirling void beneath the mirror. She screamed, yanking her leg free, feeling a sickening tug as they pulled at her very essence. "No, no, no!" she cried, panic surging as she fought against unseen forces. The grip of the shadows tightened, and she could feel them clawing at her skin, drawing the warmth from her body. With every ounce of strength she had left, Sarah lunged forward, her hands gripping the frame of the mirror. "I'm coming, Lily!" she shouted, forcing herself to look deeper into the depths, desperately intertwining her fate with her daughter's. The mirror shattered in response, a cacophony of reflections screaming her name, and in that moment of chaos, Sarah felt as though her very soul was fracturing. With a final push, she leaped through the splintered mirror, feeling the shards cut into her skin like razor blades. "Mommy!" And then everything went black. When Sarah opened her eyes again, she found herself alone in the room, painfully quiet. The mirror lay shattered at her feet, but the space felt different, thick with an unsettling weight and a tremor of wrongness. Had she saved Lily? Or had she just made everything worse? A soft, malicious laughter echoed through the corners of the room, sending chills racing down her spine. "You shouldn't have done that." What did that mean? Just then, her heart sank as realization dawned. She wasn't alone anymore. Something was there. Something hungry and watching, and Sarah had no idea how to fight it. What had she awakened? The shadows danced around her, walls trembling with a malevolent energy. Breaths came in shallow gasps, her heart pounding furiously in her chest like a trapped bird. The laughter echoed again, filling the room with a terrifying warmth that turned ice cold. "Who are you?" Sarah croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. She tried to stand but felt unsteady, her legs like jelly beneath her. The once familiar room now morphed into an alien landscape throbbing with anxiety and dread. "Not who, but what," the voice hissed, silky and malicious. It curled past her ears, wrapping around her mind like a serpent. "You've awakened something ancient, something that thrives on pain and loss." Her stomach twisted at the truth hiding in those words. The stories she had heard, once thought to be mere shadows of folklore, rushed back to her, dark tales of curses, of broken families, of parental love turned wrong. "Lily!" she screamed again, desperation rising with each breath. There was no answer, only silence, and the laughter, still that chilling, icy laughter, growing in intensity. A thin, spidery figure materialized at the edge of her vision, lurking just out of reach. Sarah turned, terror gripping her like a vice. But it flickered away, retreating into the corners, leaving only unsettling whispers in its wake. She knew better now than to feel comfort in the darkness. This was not the end, it was just the beginning. A breeze rolled through, colder than before, sending shivers down her spine. She could feel the atmosphere shifting, pressing down on her more heavily with every passing second. The shards of the mirror glinted like broken teeth on the floor. They caught the dim light, and she thought she saw fleeting images, fragments of memories and faces, some grotesque, some familiar. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah shouted, heart racing. "What do you want from me?" The shadows conversed in hushed tones, then the chilling voice spoke again, this time lower, almost soothing. "We are the whispers in the night. We are the darkness beneath your skin. You called for us, and now you must pay the price." Price? Panic surged within her. She didn't want to see what awaited her here. The memories clawed at her mind, but she fought back. "You're lying. I'm not giving in." And yet, as she stood there defiantly, the room twisted violently. She felt a tug at her essence, like a rope pulling her apart piece by piece. "You already gave in when you stepped into the mirror," the voice mocked, each word layered in delight. "You've opened a door you cannot close." Visions clouded her mind, images of Lily, wide-eyed and trembling in a landscape of despair. Each one gripped her heart tighter. "No, no, please, no!" she yelled, pressing her hands over her ears to drown out the echoing taunts. "Lily!" In the chaos, her daughter's name slipped from Sarah's lips like a prayer, a final attempt to reach the girl trapped in a world woven with shadows. The reflection of her fears surged around her, threatening to engulf her completely. The walls shifted, bending inward, as though the house itself responded to her desperation. "Mommy!" A voice cut through the clamor, fragile yet filled with desperate hope. Sarah spun around, eyes wide, holding onto that sound like a lifeline. "Lily! Where are you?" But the laughter returned now, louder, filling every corner of her mind. "Seek her, then. But beware, Sarah, you may just become the hunted." The floor beneath her began to tremble, swirling shadows beckoning her deeper into the unknown. Standing at the precipice of choice, she felt the pull of the darkness. In her chest, a heavy weight simmered. Flee or seek, her heart clawed at her as dread filled the air. "Where are you, Lily?" But even as she struggled against the unseen force, the room began to fold in on itself, enveloping her in a suffocating embrace. Just as she thought she might slip away into oblivion, a flicker of light broke through, illuminating a path forward. What lay ahead? She had no way of knowing. But the shadows were hungry. What would she be willing to sacrifice to reclaim her daughter from the darkness? And would she be willing to face the terrifying truth waiting just ahead? The shadows tugged at her clothes, whispering secrets that clawed at her mind. Heart racing, Sarah felt the light flicker, almost like a heartbeat guiding her through the gloom. It beckoned her closer, urging her forward, even as the darkness hissed in protest. Her feet moved instinctively, drawn by both fear and the fragile thread of hope that still lingered in the air. With each step, she could almost hear Lily's voice again, faint but insistent, cutting through the silence like a knife. Mommy had drifted, a thin wisp of sound that wrapped around her like a lifeline. She followed it, pushing against the oppressive shadows, desperate for clarity, for answers. "Lily! Where are you?" Sarah cried, her voice trembling but fiercely driven. The shadows answered not with laughter but with a heavy silence, as though they enjoyed her torment, delighted in delaying her reunion. Then the laughter returned, a sound filled with malice, echoing through her skull. "Do you think it's that easy?" the voice hissed. "She is closer than you think, but the price will be steep." Sarah slowed, the ominous words curling around her like a cold gust. The air thickened, heavy with despair as she stumbled into a new room. It was unrecognizable, a warped reflection of what it once had been. Furniture twisted and contorted, cobwebs clung to the ceiling like skeletal hands. And in the center of it all stood a mirror, taller than she was, its surface dark and murky. Looking into the depths, Sarah gasped. Fragmented visions swirled within, her memories, regrets, moments of joy tainted with sorrow. Her breath caught in her throat when she caught a glimpse of Lily's small face, crying for her, reaching out, a vivid representation of helplessness that made her fight back tears. "Stop!" she shouted, but the voice only laughed, a cruel mockery of her pain. "You wanted to see, didn't you? You sought the truth, and now you pay with your sanity. Enough!" she cried, sinking to her knees, feeling the cold floor seep into her bones. "I'll do anything. Just tell me how to save her." "That's the spirit," the voice purred. "Sacrifice is a powerful tool. Will you give up everything you are to save that which you love?" "What do you mean?" Panic bubbled in her chest. "What kind of sacrifice?" The mirror rippled, an almost living thing, and shadows spilled forth, dark figures shifting and swirling to resemble all the moments she'd hid from, the day she lost her father, the night she walked away from her sister, the moments she had left Lily alone, busy with her own demons. Each mistake, each tear, floated closer, whispering her failures, demanding recognition. "Choose wisely," the voice whispered, a sibilant hiss that chilled her to the bone. "One must be lost before the other can be found." Sarah's heart pounded furiously. She felt dizzy, nausea threatening to consume her. But she couldn't let fear dictate her choices anymore. Not when Lily was in danger. With resolve hardening, she leaned closer to the mirror. "Take me," she shouted, defiance igniting within her. "Take whatever you want, but let her go." The room erupted in tumultuous laughter, echoing off the walls. "Such sweet ignorance," it sang, as the shadows moved closer. "Let us see how far that bravado can carry you." Suddenly, the mirror surged, light erupting from its depths, swallowing Sarah whole. She felt weightless, like a feather caught in a tempest, and in that moment of floating, she knew she was crossing a threshold. The choice had been made, but the cost remained shrouded in darkness. What awaited her on the other side? Would she find her daughter or face the relentless horrors of her choices? The light flickered ominously, shadows creeping toward her, and she could only brace for what lay ahead. This was only the beginning, and the darkness would not be easily satisfied. The world around Sarah morphed, plunging her into a nightmarish landscape. She was no longer in the cold room with the mirror. She stood on a desolate street, dimly lit by flickering street lamps that cast grotesque shadows dancing on crumbling walls. The air crackled with an unspoken dread that gnawed at her. "Where am I?" she whispered, panic flooding her veins. Each breath tasted like ash, sour and choking. There were echoes here, echoes of laughter and cries, weaving themselves into the wind. It was familiar yet foreign, as if she had stepped into another dimension crafted from her deepest fears. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. A gaunt silhouette cloaked in shadow, features obscured but unmistakably human. Sarah's heart raced. "Lily?" she called out, voice trembling like a strand of spider silk caught in a gust. But the figure didn't respond. It merely stared, unblinking, eyes like hollow voids that seemed to swallow the light around them. She took a hesitant step forward but stopped when the figure vanished, melting into the night. Instinctively, she turned, searching desperately, her skin prickling with the chilling sensation of being watched. "Lily!" she yelled again. There had to be a sign, a hint of where to go. The air thickened, and she could hear the distant echoes of children laughing. An innocent sound turned sinister in this twisted place. It slithered through her, igniting a flicker of hope, only to be snuffed out by an icy dread. A soft voice reached her, sweet and innocent yet tainted by something dark. "Mommy," it was Lily. The resonance wrapped around Sarah like a warm blanket, momentarily drowning the fear swirling in her gut. But she couldn't tell where it was coming from. The sounds bounced and ricocheted, warping the direction she dashed forward, fueled by intuition and desperation. The shadows parted reluctantly, revealing a yard of long-abandoned toys. A rusty swing set creaked ominously in rhythm with the wind. The laughter faded, swallowed by the oppressive silence. Sarah's gut twisted. "I need you, Lily. Where are you?" Each word felt like a plea to the universe. Then the ground shuddered beneath her feet, the world tilting wildly. Before she could react, the earth split open, dark tendrils of mist rising, curling around her ankles, pulling her down. "No!" Sarah screamed, clawing at the dirt, panic surging as she felt the weight of despair sinking her. "Told you the price would be steep," the voice echoed, rich with triumph. "What will you sacrifice now?" Shadows licked at her heels as grasping hands reached up from the abyss, reminiscent of faces she recognized. People from her past, friends, family, long-forgotten acquaintances, each one wrapped in sorrowful expressions, their mouths moving but no sound reaching her ears. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks, the bitter taste of regret swirling bitterly in her throat. "I won't give in. I will save her," she shouted, the words escaping with fierce defiance she barely felt. "You think so?" the voice taunted. "You may wish to reconsider your timeline." The ground trembled again as the figures rose higher, their hands inching closer, desperate and longing, fighting against the grip of the shadows. Sarah pulled back, feeling the fragile threads of her past unraveling. She wouldn't let this curse consume her or her daughter. "Not again. Show me my choice," she hissed, heart pounding, resolve hardening. "I'm ready to face it." A blinding light cracked through the darkness, swirling with a tempest of emotions that left her breathless. For a fleeting moment, she glimpsed a pathway, a flicker of light beyond the chaos, a promise of how to find Lily. But at what cost? As the light enveloped her, she felt the urgency rise, and when it faded, she stood in front of the mirror again, foreboding and expectant, as if mocking her desperation. "Choose wisely," the sinister voice crooned ominously, echoing forever. Where was Lily? Had the cost already begun to take hold? The ground beneath her feet whispering with dread, she knew the next step could shatter whatever remained of her sanity. But she had no choice. It was time to face the true horror. How far would she go to reclaim what was lost? The mirror shimmered with a sinister allure, pulling Sarah closer. Her heartbeat thudded like a war drum. Instinct screamed at her to run, yet the image within twinkled like a beacon. A flicker of hope crawled through the darkness, but was it real, or a trap, driven by an inexplicable force, she reached out to touch the cold surface. The moment her fingers grazed the glass, pain seared through her, a jolt that ignited every nerve. The reflection rippled, transforming moment by moment, revealing fractured pieces of her memories, scenes from her past mingling with shadowy silhouettes. "Lily," she gasped, her throat tightening. Suddenly, the figures appeared more vivid: her daughter's laughter, a day in the park, their kitchen filled with warmth. Then it twisted, each moment swallowed by darkness, corrupted by screams and cries. "No!" Sarah stumbled back, her mind racing. "Not again!" But before she could break contact, an imploring face emerged in the swirling chaos, a vision of Lily, eyes wide with fear. "Mommy!" the child pleaded, her voice drowning in the suffocating darkness. "Lily! I'm here! I'm coming!" Sarah shouted, desperation clawing at her. But the vibrant image flickered, replaced by a dark void, swallowing her daughter's light. "Choose or lose her forever," the voice whispered again, a caustic melody that filled the air with dread. The mirror glimmered ominously. "What do I choose?" Sarah shouted to the nothingness. "What price do you want?" Dread pooled in her stomach. The shadows began closing in, tendrils creeping menacingly toward her. She staggered backward, mind racing for escape, but she couldn't abandon Lily. As the tendrils slithered, they began to take form, morphing into faces she recognized, loved ones, friends, and lost companions, all wearied by an unending sorrow. "Join us, Sarah," they pleaded in unison, their voices echoing hauntingly. "There is no escape." "No!" she cried, brushing away tears. "I have to save her." Heart pounding in her chest, Sarah turned back to the mirror, trembling with a desperate resolve. The grotesque faces shifted closer, empty eyes pleading yet filled with despair. "What will you sacrifice?" they hissed, reaching out, grasping blindly. "Not my daughter," she gasped, pressing her palms against the mirror, feeling the antithesis of warmth radiate from it. The glass rippled violently, dark waves crashing against her skin. "I'll do anything to save her. Just tell me." A piercing scream resounded in the void, echoing off walls that didn't exist, her own cry stringing through the air. The mirror pulsed violently beneath her touch, shifting from darkness to a fogged haze, as if breathing. Suddenly, an image solidified, a scene in that abandoned yard, toys scattered like forgotten dreams. In the center, the rusty swing set swayed lightly, holding a familiar figure, the shadow of Lily. "Mommy," the voice called again, softer this time, as if breaking through the heavy fog of despair. The ground tremored beneath her as the keepers of sorrow surged forth, faces contorting into expressions of rage, blocking her path. The shrieks grew louder, curling around her like barbed wire. "You cannot have her! Enough!" Sarah screamed, her voice a battle cry against the rising tide of shadows. "I will not let you take her." With every ounce of strength, she slammed both hands against the mirror. Light erupted, washing over the darkness, temporarily peeling back the layers of despair. Vivid colors flooded her vision, the sun breaking through the gloom, the vibrant green of grass, the laugh of a child, but that warmth was fleeting, growing dimmer by the second. Shadows clamored, a dark mass intent on swallowing her whole. "Make your choice." It roared, its voice like thunder, drowning out every glimmer of light. "No! No more choices!" She screamed as shadows clawed at her skin, the weight pulling her down. It was now or never. With every ounce of her being, she declared, "I choose love. Whatever that means, I choose her, no matter the cost." And in that moment, the mirror shattered, scattering pieces like stars across a night sky. The world imploded, spiraling into an abyss where nothing felt solid. As darkness engulfed her, a chilling whisper echoed in her ear, "Love may come at a price." Then, silence. A sudden clarity followed, and when her eyes opened again, Sarah found herself standing in a new landscape, twisted, familiar, yet deeply wrong, where shadows stretched longer and laughter turned to sinister wails. And there, ahead, stood the swing set again, swaying gently in the wind. What lay beyond it was unknown, yet the echo of a familiar name danced off the air. Lily. And in that moment, the true horror unveiled itself. How much would she lose to rescue her daughter in this distorted world where love had just become the most terrifying sacrifice of all? Sarah blinked against the glaring light. It pulsed and flickered, wrapping around her like chains. The swing set creaked quietly, an almost innocent sound amid the chaos. But she felt it beneath the rusting metal and creeping vines, and unease thrummed in the air. Shadows coiled like snakes, flickering at the edges of her vision. "Lily!" she called out, voice echoing through the hollow yard. Each call felt like a prayer, a desperate grip on the hope that perhaps this nightmare was nearing an end. But a ghastly wind howled in response, teasing her words with a mocking chill. As she took a tentative step forward, the landscape twisted again, shadows flickering with impatience. The air turned thick, wrapping around her, pulling her deeper into the dark. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, heart pounding in her chest like an alarm. But only silence answered, the shadows retreating, biding their time. Suddenly, a small figure emerged from the darkness, hair tousled, wearing a familiar white nightgown. "Mommy?" a small voice whimpered, small but saturated with longing. Sarah's heart leapt, every fiber in her body urging her to run to that fragile sound. "Lily!" she gasped, breaking into a sprint. But just as she neared, the world contorted, and the figure ebbed away like smoke. "No!" Panic surged through her, icy tendrils clawing at her resolve, trying to wrestle her back into despair. "Stay with us, join us," whispered 1,000 voices, curling around her, suffocating her in fear. Shadows surged, dark tendrils reaching for her, dragging her toward the sharp edges of anguish that lurked just behind. "No!" she cried, shaking her head. "I choose love." The words spilled from her like a shield. She pressed on against the climb of despair, heart pounding hotter than the chill of death that brushed against her skin. The playground twisted again, flickering between memories of perfect summer days, the scent of grass warmed by the sun, and evenings filled with laughter. And then darkness rushed in, whispers haunting her, children's laughter distorted, twisted into an echoing torment. "You can't save her," they sang, dripping with malice. "Leave her alone," Sarah shouted, fists clenching in defiance as she surged forward again. A light sparked in her heart, igniting her courage as she resolved to fight back against the clutches of despair. "Lily, I'm coming." She heard her own voice break as she dove into the swirl of shadows. The laughter grew into a cacophony, a chorus of agony and betrayal, enveloping her as she stumbled forward, driven by the need to find her daughter. "Mommy!" The sound cut through her like thunder, fragile but so achingly close, and there, trapped beneath the weight of shadows, she saw her. Lily stood near the swing set, eyes wide and shimmering with tears. "Mommy!" she cried again, reaching out, her little fingers grasping nothing but darkness. Desperation clawed at Sarah's throat, raw and electric. "Lily!" She lunged forward, hands trembling. As she reached for her little girl, shadows surged to block her, dark figures swirling and shrieking in fury. "You don't know the cost," they hissed, curling around her legs, pulling her into the depths of despair. "No!" Sarah bellowed, fighting the grasp of anguish. "I'll pay whatever price it takes." With fury coursing through her, she thrust through the onslaught of shadows, every fiber of her being focused on reclaiming her daughter from this nightmare. "Join us!" they growled in unison, voices dripping with temptation. But Sarah's resolve held true. Not without Lily. The swing set creaked, and the world around her flickered like a broken film reel. Lily's terrified face twisted into a smile that felt more like a trick than love, a chilling reminder of the grip of this cursed land. But as Sarah reached for her daughter, she felt a jolt of warmth surge inside her. "I choose love," she shouted through gritted teeth, hands clenching into fists. "And I choose you, Lily. Always." In that moment, something shifted. The shadows shrieked, as if the very fabric of their existence was torn. Light flooded the scene, blazing like a sunrise cutting through the darkest night. "Mommy!" Lily reached out, hope igniting her small features as she ran toward Sarah, fingers interlocked. Sarah pulled her daughter against her, warmth pouring into her veins as the shadows screamed in anguish, tearing apart under the brightening light. "We're getting out," she promised, and together they turned, racing toward the emerging dawn. But as reality wavered and the darkness fell, the figure of a woman drifted behind them, lingering at the edge of the shadows. "You may claim one life, but another will remain," it echoed hauntingly, growing fainter as the light surged around them. They burst through the veil of shadows, breaking free into a world that felt both familiar and anew. The sun bathed them in warmth as Sarah collapsed to her knees, Lily cradled in her arms. "Mommy?" Lily whispered softly, nestled against her. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm here." "I'll always be here," Sarah gasped, tears streaming down her face. The threat still lingered, a weight in the air, but for now they were together. Darkness may pursue in the depths of uncertainty, but the light of love would forever be their anchor. In that moment, as the sun finally rose, illuminating the path before them, Sarah knew love would always fight back, no matter what shadows awaited down that road. And the whispers of despair fell silent in the face of hope. Before you go, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss exclusive stories like this. Smash that like button and help us feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the end. Don't hold back. And if you know at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, don't wait even one more second to share this video with them. Your support means everything, so act now.